Joining us now to tell us all about it, Congressman, 1st District, Rob Wittman. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Good morning, John. It's great to be back with you.
Now, I know you're fired up about tonight. You get to go to the galley and all that stuff and see the president. What do you expect tonight from the President of the United States?
Well, what I want to hear from him tonight, John, is this. I want to hear from him a clear direction on what we will do concerning our nation's defense, and that includes what we do here at the homeland. You know, national security is, I think, these days a very big deal. People are very concerned. There's a large degree of anxiety and uncertainty out there. Folks want to understand more clearly and hear with more definition what's the strategy to defeat ISIS. What are we going to do to counter these rogue nations like North Korea and Iran? What are we going to do to counter the aggression of nations like Russia and China? None of that's been laid out, and all of us want to understand what needs to happen there, and want to understand that there needs to be a commitment in both policy and resources to see that happen. What are we going to do on the home front? What are we going to do to address the issues of homeland security? When the FBI says that there are active cases of terrorists operating in all 50 states, what's the president going to propose to address that particular issue? What's he going to do also to address the issues that our small businesses deal with every day and the cost and the impact of regulations on their businesses? What's he going to do to peel government back? What's he going to do to get government out of business's way? John, I think there's a laundry list of things that need to be addressed where his policies have not measured up to his words, nor have his actions in any way, shape, or form come close to addressing the very basic needs of this nation in the actual I think the criticality of getting these things done. That to me is what needs to happen tonight. Hopefully he'll talk about those things. The early indications are that he probably will not, but he must, I believe, address those issues if people are to at least walk away knowing that the president understands these issues.
It appears tonight that the president is going to take a lot of time talking about the wonderful accomplishments he's had, I guess, militarily in his mind, and also the economy. Although you look at the reality, militarily, it's hard. Remember when Ronald Reagan asked the question, I think it was, in 1980, when he was debating Jimmy Carter, and they were about tied in the polls in that time, and he said, ask yourself, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? I mean, if you ask that question today, I'd be hard-pressed for people to say they're better off.
John, I think there are a lot of metrics out there that if you look at when the president came into office and where we are today, that things are not better. If you look at the plight of the middle class, if you look at real wages adjusted for inflation, wages have been at best stagnant. If you look at the unemployment rate, those people that have stopped looking for work have gone up significantly. So the real unemployment rate is much higher than what you see in the figure that comes out of the Department of Labor. If you look at where we are with today's military, on track to have an Army going down to 450,000 soldiers, the lowest percentage of individuals as soldiers in the Army through the modern history of our military as a percentage of the population. Those things are significant, and going to 450,000 in our Army is something that all of us are concerned about, things that we are talking about needing to be addressed by the House Armed Services Committee in light of and in the face of these increasing threats around the world. Those things, I think, deeply concern people, and if you look at it based on where the president started and where he is today, both in the ability of our military, the readiness of our military, the commitment to making sure that our veterans have what they need. We have a Veterans Administration, John, that is even more challenged today than it's been in the past in providing timely care to our veterans and making sure that those things are done in the right way with the highest quality of care, making sure the Veterans Administration is properly managed, getting claims done in some semblance of reasonable time frames for veterans, making sure they have access to care, all of those things falling far, far short. So I think if you look across the board as far as a report card, I think in a number of areas, the president leaves us in worse shape than we were when he first came into office.
Well, and then you look at the debt, and I'm sure he's not going to talk about that. It was $7 trillion when he took over. Now it's approaching $20 trillion. You know, he's nearly tripled it, 2.5 times the debt. and there's no end in sight. So it just goes on into perpetuity. We've got unfunded mandates. There's some people in your caucus saying that we have unfunded mandates of $120 trillion. There's no way to pay this stuff. And I guess none of that is going to be talked about tonight, right?
I'm sure none of that's going to be brought up, but John, you're exactly right. Now, he will point to saying that they reduced the deficit by 50%, but think about this. We had deficits over $1 trillion, and now they're going to be below $500 billion. $500 billion is still obscene as far as the amount of deficit that this nation faces, and to somehow account that as an achievement and not getting ourselves to a balanced budget and continuing to rack up debt, to me, is not an achievement to trumpet. It's still falling far short of where we need to be. So I look at it as not a success, but actually a failure of not getting the deficits down to zero, which we know is critical to this nation's financial well-being.
You know what's also interesting? I just want to get your comment on this, and then I've got to just beg your patience. I got to go to a quick sponsor, but
sure.
You look at the Democratic side. These, I guess, you discount really Governor O'Malley. He's not a factor right now. But I find this Democratic race fascinating because it's like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton are trying to out-give away each other, right? Sanders yesterday, this is just mind-blowing to me, coming out basically saying 100% Medicaid expansion for everybody, free college tuition for everybody. Now Clinton is like going 75% to match him. How do they plan to pay for this? I mean, and the fact that people are going to rally, serious political people, thinking, yeah, let's just expand Medicaid for everybody. Let's just get everybody a free college. Let's get everybody, relieve everybody's debt. Let's get everybody this and everybody that. I mean, how do they reconcile paying for this without the economy at some point just collapsing?
Well, John, you're exactly right. The math doesn't add up on this. You cannot continue to fund these types of programs and expect that somehow the electorate's going to be able to foot the bill for it. The reality is not there, and especially in light of what burden we already place on businesses, both in the cost of regulations and the current tax code. The math is plain and simple. You cannot pay for these things. It's easy to promise them, but it's impossible to pay for them. But promising, becomes part of the political process here. And then what ultimately comes of that is, can you deliver on the promise? I don't think that any of these promises can be delivered on, although they sound very alluring to some folks that believe that they don't have to worry about how this is paid for.
Well, we have a Democrat party now in America, a national party, where their socialist candidate, and that's what Bernie Sanders is. I mean, he's an interesting guy, and some of the things he says about Wall Street, I'm on the team with him. But this guy's a socialist, and he's gonna most likely win the first two Democratic primaries. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this ever happening in the United States. And it really the thing that I want to get your opinion on is that there's no Congressman Wittman, that a segment of the country is moving way left. And I don't know exactly what the phenomena is, but this is kind of what's missed in the mainstream media. I mean, if you put Bernie Sanders in a Democratic primary in 1976 or 1968, I mean, he would be at 1%. So something's happening, right?
There's a mindset in the country, I think, born out of the frustration with what's happening right now with a president that has not allowed our economy to grow and prosper. More and more people feel left out, and instead of looking at saying the way we address that issue is to make sure we get government out of the way so our economy can grow, is they look at it from a standpoint and saying, well, the way we take care of these issues is to grow government, is to make sure government is doing more in the area of social programs, doing more to pay for things, making sure that they guarantee outcomes, not guaranteeing opportunities. And that's counter to how our nation functions. It's counter to what I think brings out the best in individuals. But growing government in some people's minds is the way to address this problem. But it's born out of a frustration about where we are today with the failed policies of this administration.
No question. The redistricting court decision that came down, I believe it was on Friday or Thursday, minimal impact of the first district. You've got some areas that are going to change. It's not really going to change the makeup of it that much. But what happens now? I mean, it's going to the Supremes, but there's no guarantee that they'll even take this up. So there's some confusion, but the way we understand it is that as of today, those are the new lines, right? As of now, until something happens.
Well, certainly, as far as the lower court ruling, and we do have, John, a case before the Supreme Court that the Supreme Court has agreed to take up. So they will hear that during this section of the Supreme Court, which ends at the end of the first half of this year. So it ends in June. So hopefully they'll make a ruling, at least sometime before the primaries come up. We have also filed a motion to stay the lower court's ruling because of our pending case before the Supreme Court that they've taken up, and that's essentially where we are. I'm not going to comment any more than that because there is a pending case before the Supreme Court. But counter to what we've heard from some others is our case has been accepted by the Supreme Court, so they will hear our case, and we have filed a motion to stay the ruling of the lower court, which has essentially put in place this new map and has said that this is the map that we will run under for the current primary. Now, we hope to have a ruling by the Supreme Court on the motion to stay by the end of the week, so we should know something by then.
Okay, so by the end of the week or maybe early next week, you're going to get a decision by the Supreme Court on whether or not to stay. So if they go with a stay, then things go back to where they were until the Supreme Court rules, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so they go back to where they were until the Supreme Court rules. If the stay is denied, then it's the opposite. It's whatever the lower court said goes into effect today unless the Supreme Court changes it, which means then people are running basically dual campaigns because you don't know what your district will be.
Well, it does create some uncertainty, John, and if the Supreme Court does not stay the lower court ruling, then yes, that's the decision that stands. Those are the districts that'll be before us. Potentially, if the Supreme Court decides differently in the case we have pending before them, then the districts could change back before the primary date of June 14th. So it does create a little bit of uncertainty there, and we're trying to figure our way through that.
It's not an easy process. I remember the first time we met in your office, it was late 2010. I was the editorial page editor of the Daily Press, and you were going through the same thing. Your district hadn't been set, and I remember you said to me, I just want them to tell me what my district is so I can go out, knock on doors, and meet the voters. I don't care where it is, who it is, what it is. Just tell me the lines. Remember that?
Exactly. I do, John, and that's where most of us are, especially when you get pushed on time frames because, we have deadlines that we have to file the necessary paperwork to qualify to be on the ballot. And, if those time frames change, it creates a little bit of uncertainty for us. And all I want to be able to do is to plan, as you said, to get out there and talk to folks and make sure that I'm hearing from them and then asking, too, for their support so that we can be on the ballot in this, both in this primary cycle and the general election cycle.
All right. Final comment on this evening's State of the Union speech. I think Nikki Haley is giving the Republican response. From what you've seen and heard, what is there one thing that you would be happy if the president said tonight, Congressman Wittman?
Well, I'd be happy if he committed to two things, John. I'd be happy if he made a firm, direct, and specific commitment on what we will do on national defense strategy. And that is, what are we going to do to counter the threats we see around the world? What are we going to do specifically to defeat ISIS? Not platitudes, but specifically what are we going to do? And specifically what are we going to do to counter the aggression we see elsewhere, whether it's by rogue leaders or whether it's by the near-peer competitor states like Russia and China. I want to hear, too, what is he going to do to address the shortfalls in taking care of this nation's veterans? And they are many. I want to make sure I hear a clear path there, and I, too, want to hear from him. What is he going to do to truly help our small businesses, which are the engine of job creation in this nation. And that's what has held the middle class back, John, is there's not the ability for those businesses to grow. Therefore, there are not these career ladder jobs for the middle class. So the middle class, many folks are stuck in dead-end jobs and then having to work a second job part-time in order to just make ends meet. What's he going to do to make sure that we have those opportunities there? What's he going to do to get government out of the way so that our small businesses can not only grow, the ones that exist today, but also what can we do to encourage those folks with entrepreneurial spirit to create those jobs of the future? That is, to form those small businesses today. I think that's what this nation is longing to hear, and the vision that they want to hear put forth in the State of the Union address tonight.
You're most likely going to go 0 for 3.
Yes.
But hey, there's always hope, right? You're going to go over 3.
I would say that's what the nation wants to hear.
You're going to go over 3.
Can't confirm that they will.
You're going to do an 0 for tonight, but I appreciate the thought, Congressman. Look, I got 20 seconds. The Redskins are out. Who's your pick to win the Super Bowl?
Gosh, I don't know. You know, you can go with the perennial favorites like the Seahawks and the Patriots, and both of them look good. The Seahawks played a nail biter the other day, but continue to look better and better. And the Kansas City Chiefs look pretty good with their early victory in the wild card game. Well, I would say based on the percentages, Patriots and Seahawks.
Okay, you're saying Patriots and Seahawks. You didn't give me the winner. I'm going to give you my prediction. Chiefs win it all. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to thank Dr. Rob Wittman for being with us. Want more info, Wittman.house.gov. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.